Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to write a Node.js program that will log all new bank transactions to the console using the Politics and War GraphQL API. There are two components to this project. One is going to be designing our query using the Politics and War GraphQL API playground, and then the second part is obviously going to be actually writing the JavaScript program. This is a great foundation. Obviously, there's probably not too much use in just simply dumping stuff to the console, but it's a great starting point for maybe you want to put these transaction records in a database or something like that. So let's go ahead and get started. First, what you want to do is log in to politicsandwar.com, or I'm on the test server. You can click on the account link on the sidebar and you'll go to this page, scroll all the way down till you see the API key section here. Copy your API key. Next, you'll want to go to api.politicsandwar.com/GraphQL playground. I'm on api-test.politicsandwar.com for the test server. In this URL bar at the top here, append your API key by typing $API_key equals paste your key. You can see that error went away, and now we can view the documentation. To design our query, we can find the Alliance Bank records in the Alliances section. And then scroll down to get, and you can see the bank recs node, and then here are all the fields accessible on the bank rec. So let's go ahead and type, and you can see Alliances accepts an ID parameter. This is an array of IDs, but we're going to only be passing in the ID of our alliance because we can't view bank recs for other alliances. To start, open curly and closing curly brace here. Type alliances, our query name, ID, open square bracket, close square bracket, paste in the ID of our alliance. Then specify what fields we want, bank recs, and then open curly brace, close curly brace to specify what fields are the bank recs we want. We want the ID, money, and the note. Hit play, and you can see we've got all of our data here. We have the ID of the bank transaction, how much money was transferred, and the note. Now we can go ahead and remember this query, and we'll come back to it later. You'll want to go ahead and download Node.js on your computer. I'm using Node.js for Windows. Then go ahead and make a new file called bankreclogger.js or something similar. We're going to contain all of this program in one file. We're going to start by requiring the HTTPS module. That's what we're going to be using to make our requests. And if any of this looks unfamiliar, this is JavaScript syntax. I'd recommend refresh your JavaScript skills if you need to. I have a more beginner-oriented tutorial covering Google Apps Script that you may want to check out first. Anyways, let's continue. We're going to be using the HTTPS module to actually execute our requests. You might want to use something like Axios to kind of save some of the boilerplate, but I think this is the simplest option for now, so you don't need to require any external dependencies. Next, we're going to define a couple constants. The first one being the variables that we are going to pass in our request that the HTTPS module needs. For hosts, we're going to have api.politicsandwar.com or api-test. Then our path is going to be /GraphQL space API_key and your API key. Then we have our method. This is a post request. Then our headers to set the content type to JSON. Oh, whoops. Perfect, looking good here. Next, we're going to define the body of our request. The body is going to take in a query key, typo there. The body is going to take in a query key equal to our GraphQL query, so I'm going to use backticks for a multi-line string here. and then copy in the query we wrote earlier in the playground. Next, I'm going to wrap all of our code from now on in a set interval block because we want to run this every 5 seconds. So I'm going to do set interval. Then I'm going to use an arrow function here. So we're going to write our body of the function in here, and then the second parameter to set interval is the timeout in milliseconds. So 5,000 is every 5 seconds. Then we're going to have our request. So I'm going to save this to the request constant. It's going to be https.request. 2 parameters here, the options that we had defined earlier, and then it has a callback function with the response. Inside of the callback, we're going to have 2 event handlers here. So we're going to have an onData, and this event will return a chunk that we will append to a new data variable here. Looks good. So every time that we get a buffer returned, we're going to append it to a previous buffer. And then whenever the request is finished, we're going to actually do the logic for printing out the bank recs. So the bank recs is going to be equal to our data, but this is a JSON object, so we need to parse it into a JavaScript object. Then there is a data parameter on our, go back to the playground, we need to go data, alliances, first one, bank recs. So data.alliances, first one, bank recs. Then we're going to filter down our bank recs because this will return everything in the past 14 days. So we're going to filter it down by storing locally here a global variable called last ID of the last transaction that we logged. I'm going to go ahead and set this one to, I'm going to hard code in the last ID here just to save some time. But you'd probably want to pull this from a database or just check the timestamp. Or you can just put 0 and then you'll get everything in the last 14 days to start, and then you'll get new transactions appended to the console. Anyways, we're going to do the bank recs. So this is an array of bank recs, and we're going to use the filter method. And the filter method, we're going to give it an arrow function here. So bank rec, if the ID of the bank rec is greater than the last ID, we're going to keep it in this filtered array. And then for each filtered bank rec, we're going to log it to the console. So we're going to log the amount of money, and then we're going to log the note. Perfect. And then we're also going to have a block here to update the last ID if there was any bank recs returned. And here we're just getting the last element of the filtered bank recs if it exists. And then setting the last ID here. Awesome. And then the things we kind of forgot about outside of this handler here, we need to actually write our body to the request. So we're just going to stringify the body constant we defined up here, contained our query, and then we're going to end our request. All right. This looks pretty good here. Just check it out. So we've got our requiring the HTTPS package, defining our options, we have our body, we have our last ID, we have our set interval function ready to run every 5 seconds, have our request with our event handlers, and then we're writing our we're passing in our stringified body here. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to type node bankrec logger.js to run it. And then let's go ahead, it's not going to return anything initially, but let's go ahead and make a bank transaction here, $12. And if we wait a few seconds, there we go. We got our bank rec. Sweet, let's do it again. Do some more money. There we go. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was informational for you. Now I'm interested to see how you're going to continue building on this to either store these transactions in a database, maybe utilize Discord webhooks, but a lot of potential here. So thanks for learning some GraphQL with me. Thanks for reviewing your JavaScript and writing a nifty little program. So have a great day.